Minister, my question pertains to the prevalence of poverty in this country, and that has been extenuated by the pandemic. Minister, I want to ask if you've heard the calls from the St Vincent de Paul, who acknowledged that of the 700,000 people who are experiencing poverty in Ireland, that's been compounded throughout the pandemic, and they've asked for a special task force to be set up to look at poverty and inequality. I wonder, has the Minister heard that, and if that's something she's willing to accept? Thanks, Deputy Minister. Thank you.
These seats go down very far. Thank you, Deputy, for raising this matter, and of course my department regularly engages with St Vincent de Paul, and I hope to meet them very soon. Life in Ireland has changed considerably over the past few months. Many people in Ireland are living in very difficult circumstances, and that's why my department quickly rolled out supports like the COVID-19 pandemic unemployment payment, and in conjunction with the Department of Finance and Revenue Commissioners, the temporary wage subsidy scheme as emergency payments to support those most in need. Research undertaken by the ESRI examined the impact on family incomes of COVID-19 related job losses and found that 400,000 families would see their disposable income fall by more than 20% in the absence of policy measures such as the PUP. It's important to note that the pandemic unemployment payment reduced the numbers exposed to such losses. These measures were also effective in cushioning families at the lower end of the income distribution from such losses. In addition, the 4-week extension of the fuel allowance payment provided 369,000 households with additional help for their fuel costs. Funding for school meals was made available to schools to the end of the academic year and also for the summer period. The back-to-school clothing and footwear allowance is available to people receiving the pandemic unemployment payment to help them meet the expenses of the new school year. Tomorrow I will attend my department's pre-budget forum, where I will have the chance to talk to the groups representing the most vulnerable and disadvantaged in our society and hear their views on the priorities for the coming budget. This is an important part of the budgetary process, and I'm looking forward to a good discussion. And I want to reiterate the Government's commitment to the rigorous implementation of the Roadmap for Social Inclusion. The Roadmap provides for a robust governance structure to ensure the implementation of commitments. Progress will be monitored on an ongoing basis through the Social Inclusion Roadmap Steering Group, and this group includes 2 external members, Sister Bernadette McMahon and Dr Patricia Keelty from the Society of St Vincent de Paul. And while the Deputy will appreciate that it is not my role to establish Oireachtas committees, I can assure him that I will continue to engage with the relevant Oireachtas committees in regard to all matters relating to my department, including issues relating to poverty and inequality.
Deputy Gannon.
I suppose it's a very specific issue of how we're going to confront the fact that poverty has been extenuated during the pandemic period. Poverty is something that's corrosive, impacts people at every walk of life, and while we have roadmaps, we've consistently missed their targets over the last 10 years. So what's been asked for by groups such as the St Vincent de Paul and other social justice groups is for special attention to be placed on the issue of poverty and inequality. I'm very interested in this idea, Minister. So there's one group in particular I'm thinking of who are one-parent families. And one-parent families, who, as you've mentioned in your speech, will have benefited from the pandemic unemployment payment. But one-parent families are also the group most statistically at risk of poverty in this country. And if we're now telling recipients of PUP that they have to be actively seeking work, one-parent families can't access childcare. So how would that common sense approach work for that particular cohort if they go into a social welfare office?
Thanks, Deputy. Minister.
Thank you. Well, just to say, the Roadmap for Social Inclusion was approved by Government on the 9th of January 2020 and published on the 14th, and it really is a whole-of-government strategy with a 5-year time frame and a mid-term review at the midpoint in quarter 2022. But the best way out of poverty is to get people into work. and that is a key focus of the additional funding on job activation measures contained in the stimulus package, which of course is the 200 million package that I spoke about earlier. And the official poverty data is produced by the CSO annually from the Survey on Income and Living Conditions, and the most recent data is from 2018 and shows a national consistent poverty rate of 5.6%. The 2019 data is likely to show an improvement due to an increase in incomes and the impact of recent budgetary measures. However, it is expected that the 2020 data will see an increase in rates across the majority, if not all, of the official poverty measures.
Deputy Gannon.
I do want to confront that old trope of the best way of getting people out of poverty is to get them into work. I think you should tell that to the 160,000 people in this country who were working and still experiencing poverty before the pandemic, because they were in work and still very much experiencing poverty. The best way we can get people out of poverty is to provide an appropriate social safety net, that when they are struggling, that the state will step in and support them. Minister, you've mentioned several times during your contribution now that there are some professions who simply won't be coming back, which is why we have to have this, what I'd argue to be a cruel amendment to the PUP payment, that people have to actively search and work even though they've left. So I just want to ask, Minister, what professions do you or your department think are not going to be coming back specifically?
Minister.
Well, as the economy opens up, we hopefully, as you know, we hope that the 10th of August will mean that the remaining businesses will be able to open. But what we're doing here is following public health advice. So I can't give you a timeline on when anybody's going to open. It's all based on the public health advice, and we have to follow that. It has served us well, and it's something that we will make our decisions on. And just to say that it is recognised by Eurostat that the Irish tax and welfare system is the most effective in the EU in reducing poverty. And as Minister for Social Protection and as Minister for Rural and Community Development, my focus is on ensuring that no person or community, regardless of where they are from, is left behind, and that is something that I will certainly work towards, and I look forward to working with you, Deputy, in achieving those goals, because I'm sure you're of the same opinion.